Susan Sontag's On Photography continues to draw criticism. In this essay collection, she examines photography both as a form of expression and as a cultural and philosophical tool. She examines whether photography can achieve the level of being art, or if it's just a mechanical process of shaping human perception. The history of photography is a central part of Sontag's critique, and founded in the early 1800s, it soon turned from a technical miracle to an artistic medium. By the 20th century, it was a prevailing form of communication, rivaling the written and spoken word, and this shift made it ripe for scrutiny. Sontag's essays borrow from the writings of philosophers such as Walter Benjamin, who investigated the loss of authenticity in reproduced art, and Roland Barthes, whose camera lucida scrutinized the affective impact of images. These intellectual currents helped shape her perspective that photography holds unique power but also distinct limitations. Sontag saw photographs as evidence, but not in an uncomplicated sense. They record things, but they distort facts, she claimed, by telling selective truths. Photographs furnish evidence, she writes. But what evidence? This ambiguity is at the core of her critique, and she also suggested photography changes how memory works. People often recall moments not as they happen, but as they appear in pictures. And this creates a paradox. Photographs help preserve memories, but they simplify them. For Sontag, this reduction turns lived experiences into consumable products. Her concept of photography as appropriation extends this critique. By photographing something, you own the experience, making it your own personal relic. And Sontag compared it to aesthetic consumerism, in which photographing replaces genuine engagement with reality. Photojournalism is still controversial as an art form, and Sontag fueled the flames. Although some held that photography's beauty made it artistic, she emphasized its reliance on mechanical processes. To photograph is to frame, and to frame is to exclude, she wrote, suggesting that artistic merit requires more than technical skill. Ordinary language fixes the difference between handmade images like Goya's and photographs by the convention that artists make drawings and paintings while photographers take photographs. But the photographic image, even to the extent that it is a trace, not a construction made out of disparate photographic traces, cannot be simply a transparency of something that happened. It is always the image that someone chose. To photograph is to frame, and to frame is to exclude. She compared photography with painting and sculpture, which are deliberate, visceral acts. Photography, in contrast, relies on machines to make images, and while photographers exercise choice in framing and timing, she argued this falls short of traditional artistic intent. The presence of the photographer complicates this even further. A good photographer infuses their work with vision and gives a meaning to viewers. Sontag acknowledged this, but maintained that photography's mechanical nature limits its artistic potential. Sontag's ethical concerns about photography, especially photojournalism, remain some of her most provocative arguments. She critiqued the use of graphic images of suffering, such as war or famine, to provoke reactions. And while such images raise awareness, she questioned their morality. Do they educate or exploit? To photograph people is to violate them by seeing them as they never see themselves, by having knowledge of them that they can never have. It turns people into objects that can be symbolically possessed. Just as a camera is a sublimation of the gun, to photograph someone is a subliminal murder, a soft murder, appropriate to a sad, frightened time. She suggested viewers often become desensitized when exposed to endless images of pain. The shock of photographed atrocities wears off with repeated viewings, just as the surprise and amusement felt the first time one sees a pornographic movie wear off after one sees a few more. She observed that, illustrating how this dynamic reduces empathy over time. And these concerns extend to the act of photographing itself. For Sontag, photographing someone in distress risks turning their suffering into spectacle. She challenged the idea that any photograph can exist free from ethical implications. Sontag argued that photographs do more than reflect reality, they construct it. A photograph selects what to include and exclude, shaping how people perceive the subject. And this process creates a curated version of reality, often more persuasive than words. Adding to this, she pointed out that photographs carry inherent ambiguity. Without context, they invite multiple interpretations. And this flexibility makes photographs powerful but also problematic, as meaning can shift depending on who views them and how. She also condemned photography as propagandism. Photographs have been employed by governments and advertisers to influence people's perceptions, And prominent examples include war propaganda posters that illustrate how images are used to drive certain emotions and behaviors. Sontag's arguments are insightful, but not without critics. Most deny her doubts about photography's artistic value, citing Ansel Adams and Dorothea Lange. They fuse technical skill with creative sensitivity in opposition to her argument that photography is lacking in depth. Additionally, some argue that photography's role has evolved since Sontag's time. Digital photography and platforms like Instagram democratize the medium, allowing more diverse forms of expression, and these changes challenge her critiques of photography as inherently mechanical or exploitive. And despite criticisms, Sontag's influence remains undeniable. Her essays shaped how scholars and laypeople think about photography. She raised questions that continue to inform debates on art, ethics, and visual culture. And whether one agrees with her conclusions or not, her ideas continue to provoke reflection. As always, if you enjoyed this video, you know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe. And this might be a good one to check out next.